Flight attendant Mocks Janitor on plane regrets it when he buys the airline. Welcome to this compelling tale where appearances are deceiving and the power of humility reigns supreme. Our story begins at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, a sprawling hub of bustling travelers, ambitious employees, and unexpected twists. A seasoned flight attendant finds herself entangled in a moment of arrogance when she mocks a seemingly unimportant janitor on board. Yet beneath his humble exterior lies a life-altering secret. Before the day is through, that one careless insult will spark a dramatic reversal of fortunes, reminding us that no one should ever be underestimated. Get ready for tension, shock, and a redemption arc that soars to unforgettable heights. Before we dive in, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. If you're excited about this story, let us know. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press O. Your feedback really inspires me to gather more uplifting and meaningful stories. Serena Barnes had worked for Skyguard Airlines for nearly a decade, and in that time, she had prided herself on being among the most poised and composed of all flight attendants. Her crisp uniform, complete with a perfectly tied scarf, and her glossy blonde hair, always in a neat chignon, helped her stand out from the rest. She knew the safety demonstrations by heart and could recite the airline's regulations backward. In her view, attention to detail defined professionalism, yet lately, a creeping impatience had begun to shadow her interactions with anyone who, in her opinion, slowed her down or disrupted the smooth flow of her domain. On this particular morning, the airport hummed with the frenetic energy of thousands of passengers rushing through concourses, shuffling past one another toward gates, coffee shops, and departure boards. The overhead announcements crackled with boarding calls. Airport vendors hawked to-go meals. Meanwhile, Serena silently lamented the fact that she had been assigned an early flight from Atlanta to Los Angeles. She was never a morning person and often blamed her short temper on lack of sleep. Nonetheless, she told herself that she was a consummate professional. No matter her mood, her job came first. Skyguard Airlines prided itself on strong customer service, but the truth was that the airline had recently endured whispers of financial instability. Rumors circulated among employees about a potential buyout from an anonymous investor, a figure rumored to be extremely wealthy but unknown to all but the highest echelons of management. Serena, however, paid little mind to gossip. Her focus was on the next flight and how quickly she could get it over with. She wanted to be done and hopefully snag a seat on an earlier return flight so she could rest. In her mind, the rumored purchase, if it happened, would not affect her day-to-day routine. That morning, she was posted at gate A27, corralling a line of bleary-eyed travelers. The flight was a typical cross-country run, 6 hours, a Boeing 737 fully packed due to the busy summer season. Serena mentally ticked off each seat assignment, reciting it like a mantra in her head. She extended a polite but perfunctory greeting to each passenger, scanning their boarding pass, though her voice lacked its usual warmth. Behind her, the rest of the cabin crew prepared the seats and overhead compartments. While a few children squealed in excitement about their upcoming vacation, an older couple argued softly about where to stow their carry-on, and a group of college students snapped selfies. Serena's eyes were drawn to a figure near the edge of the gate area. The man wore a rumpled custodian's uniform, midnight blue coveralls with a reflective strip across the shoulders. A small embroidered patch read Property Services, and below it, in cursive, Nathan. He appeared to be in his late 30s, with short, dark hair that looked as though it had been combed with little care. A baseball cap was tucked under one arm, and a faint layer of dust clung to his sleeves. As Nathan approached the gate, he wheeled behind him a modest carry-on. An older flight attendant, Margie, greeted him with a friendly smile. She asked if he was sure he was in the right line, to which he nodded. "Yes, I'm headed to L.A. on Skyguard Flight 204, he replied softly. At that, Margie waved him through with warm courtesy. But Serena, scanning the crowd, narrowed her eyes. She had never encountered a janitor traveling so nonchalantly on one of her flights, especially not one wearing his work uniform. It struck her as odd. Didn't travelers typically wear casual clothes or business attire? She glanced at the passenger manifest on her tablet, scanning for Nathan, but she didn't see a last name. Irritated, she waved him forward anyway, assuming he must have a ticket. This was not the time for random suspicions. She had a plane to board. Once inside the aircraft, Serena moved briskly through the aisle, verifying that carry-ons were placed properly and seat numbers matched. She noticed that Nathan had settled into seat 12A, a window seat near the mid-cabin. He was polite, greeting the woman who sat next to him and tucking his small bag neatly under the seat in front. No fuss, no drama. The only odd detail was that he still wore his coveralls, an odd choice for a traveler. Serena let out a small, inaudible sigh. Probably some maintenance worker traveling last minute, she thought. Nothing unusual. The first real snag of the day occurred during the initial boarding period, when overhead bin space began to run out. A handful of passengers in the back tried to cram large bags into small bins, prompting heated exchanges. Serena's frustration grew. She prided herself on keeping order, so she marched up the aisle, ordering a handful of perplexed tourists to gate-check their oversized luggage. She pointed them back toward the front, ignoring their grumbling. As the line in the aisle stalled, Nathan stood up, offering to help an elderly woman hoist her bag into the overhead. That was all well and good, until he accidentally bumped Serena's shoulder in the cramped space. She spun around, glaring. "Excuse me," she snapped. "Watch where you're going." Her voice was sharper than she intended, but she felt no urge to soften it, especially after such a chaotic morning. Nathan gave her an apologetic smile and stepped back. "I'm sorry," he said gently, "just trying to help her with her bag." He shrugged, as if to indicate there was little room to maneuver. Serena, in no mood for pleasantries, retorted with a frosty, "Kindness is great, but maybe next time be more aware of your surroundings." Nearby passengers shot glances at one another, sensing the tension. The elderly woman mouthed a silent thank you to Nathan for his assistance. He nodded politely and sank back into his seat, cheeks faintly reddened. Serena, for her part, turned on her heel and proceeded to the galley to double-check the pre-flight service items, trying to compartmentalize the confrontation. Once everyone was seated, the cabin door closed, and the plane pushed back from the gate. The safety demonstration commenced, with Serena standing in the aisle, demonstrating how to fasten seatbelts and where to locate the life vests. As she did so, her gaze flicked more than once toward Nathan, who simply watched intently, hands folded in his lap. Serena could not name why she found his presence irritating, but something about him rubbed her the wrong way. Perhaps it was his calm composure, or maybe it was that he looked out of place among the well-dressed corporate travelers and families in tourist garb. 30 minutes later, the flight reached its cruising altitude, and the seatbelt sign blinked off with a gentle chime. The flight attendants got to work on the beverage service. They maneuvered the narrow metal carts down the aisle, offering coffee, juice, or soda to each row. When Serena reached row 12, she forced a smile. "Something to drink?" she asked. Nathan requested a water and crackers. Serena handed the water bottle over, but then discovered the cracker supply was running low. Irritated, she rummaged in the supply kit, but found none. "We're out," she said flatly. "You'll have to settle for pretzels." "That's fine," he replied, a polite smile crossing his face. "Thank you." He accepted the pretzels without complaint. For reasons unknown, perhaps her exhaustion or her own biases, Serena found herself compelled to keep talking, but her tone was less than courteous. "Heading to LA for work?" she asked, casting a pointed glance at his uniform. "I guess big cities need people to clean up too." Nathan paused, blinking at the question's condescension. "You could say that," he responded softly, leaving it at that. He turned toward the window, politely ending the exchange. Despite her growing annoyance at her own sour attitude, Serena persisted. "We do have a dress code for passengers." She lied, though she knew no such official policy existed for economy travelers. "I mean, this is a place of business for some of our high-paying customers." He regarded her calmly. "I've never heard of an airline refusing entry because of a work uniform." His voice maintained an even humility, neither combative nor apologetic. "But if it's a problem, I could remove the coveralls." He gestured to a T-shirt underneath the half-unzipped coverall. "I just came straight from a job site." The mildness of his tone only irritated her further. She felt a nagging guilt for being rude, but she doubled down instead of relenting. She sniffed. "Please, do what you need to do. I'd hate for other passengers to complain." She moved on quickly, leaving him in an uncomfortable silence. The entire exchange had been brief, yet it drew side eyes from those in adjacent seats. Even the passenger across the aisle looked troubled, as if wanting to intervene but not daring to. If there was one cardinal rule in air travel, it was don't argue with the flight attendant. For the next hour, Serena went about distributing drinks and the snack service, trying to ignore the subtle tension that clung to her like static electricity. Then came the immediate karma. During a mid-flight lull, while clearing trays, Serena opened an overhead bin to reorganize some items. Suddenly, the plane encountered a patch of turbulence. The jolt caused a heavy carry-on suitcase to topple out. Serena tried to dodge it, but not quickly enough. It struck her on the shoulder, knocking her off balance. She stumbled into the aisle with a startled cry. Pain radiated through her arm, and she felt her face flush red as she struggled to regain her composure. Passengers gasped, some asking if she was okay. Humiliated, Serena forced a tight smile. "I'm fine," she lied, blinking back tears of both pain and embarrassment. As she rose, she noticed that Nathan, from row 12, had stood up and extended a hand to help her. She pretended not to see it, turning to Adam, a fellow flight attendant, for support instead. Adam guided her to the galley, offering an ice pack for her bruised shoulder. As Serena gingerly pressed it to her throbbing arm, she couldn't help recalling how she had snapped at Nathan earlier. It felt like a cosmic correction. She had belittled someone for wearing a janitor's uniform, and now she was the one requiring assistance. Yet she refused to label it as karma. She was simply having a bad day, that was all. Nevertheless, her mood soured further, and the flight continued in uneasy tension. Near the end of the flight, Serena announced that if passengers had any trash, they should pass it forward. She avoided making eye contact with Nathan as she walked by. He, in turn, quietly complied, handing over a small empty bottle and a pretzel packet. This time, he said nothing. The engine's hum was the only sound as they prepared for descent into Los Angeles. Upon landing at LAX, passengers began to disembark in the usual rush. Serena stood near the cabin door, thanking each traveler in a routine monotone. "Thank you for flying Skyguard Airlines. Have a nice day." She barely glanced at them. When Nathan reached her, she gave him a curt nod, but he paused, as if about to speak. Catching the tightness in her expression, he merely said, "Have a good one," and disembarked. She exhaled in relief, watching him disappear into the jet bridge. Once the passengers were gone, the flight attendants debriefed in the empty cabin. collecting leftover blankets and verifying seat pockets for lost items. Adam gently teased Serena. "What was that about back there with the guy in the custodian uniform?" She shrugged. "He bumped me, then insisted on wearing his grimy uniform. It was weird. Anyway, he's gone now, so it's not our concern." Adam frowned, saying nothing, though he seemed to sense an unspoken tension. Serena brushed off her slight guilt, focusing instead on her next assignment. 2 days passed in relative normalcy. Serena completed 2 more flights, none remarkable. She had all but forgotten about the janitor, as she internally labeled Nathan. Then, on the 3rd day, she arrived at the Skyguard Airlines crew lounge at LAX for a cross-country return flight to Atlanta. The lounge buzzed with an unusual energy, flight crews huddled in corners, whispering excitedly. Some stared at their phones with wide eyes. Serena paused by the coffee machine, overhearing snippets of conversation. Massive buyout. Didn't see it coming. Some new investor finalized the deal. Curious, Serena checked her own phone. Her heart skipped when she saw an internal corporate memo from Skyguard Airlines management. "We are pleased to announce a major investment that has resulted in a controlling stake purchase by a new leadership entity." More details forthcoming at today's press conference. The rumor mill said the new investor had acquired the airline for an eye-watering sum, bailing it out of near insolvency. The identity of that investor remained a mystery, though word was that he'd be touring one of the major hubs to get a feel for operations. Serena felt mildly concerned about how a buyout might affect her. Would there be layoffs? Restructuring? She decided to remain calm. She was a senior flight attendant with a decent record, so she presumed she was safe. Perhaps the new owners would even improve conditions. Putting her thoughts aside, she grabbed her flight assignments and set out toward Gate 46B for her flight to Atlanta. Once on board, Serena performed her usual checks. The flight was nearly full. She and Adam were assigned to first class, and the forward economy rows, while a junior attendant, Lucy, handled the rear cabin. Mid-boarding, just as Serena was helping a passenger stow a bag, she overheard an excited hush among those entering the plane. People began craning their necks to see what the commotion was about. Then she heard a voice, "Please welcome Mr. Donovan from corporate and the new principal investor, Mr. Drake." A sudden hush rippled along the aisle. The name Drake didn't ring a bell, so Serena continued adjusting the overhead bin. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw a short, balding man in a crisp suit leading someone forward. This second figure wore a tailored jacket, but not a tie. He had short, dark hair. She couldn't make out his face in the swarm of people, so she turned her attention back to her work. Yet the crowd parted, giving these VIPs space. The men walked slowly, scanning the aircraft interior with keen interest. As they drew closer, Serena's stomach lurched. The taller man, the so-called new investor, was none other than Nathan, the janitor she had mocked. Gone were the coveralls, replaced by an elegant outfit. But his features were unmistakable. He had the same calm expression, the same posture, though now there was an air of confidence about him that she had not witnessed before. Serena's mind whirled. Could he possibly be the mysterious buyer who had just purchased Skyguard? She listened, heart pounding, as the short man in the suit addressed him. "Mr. Drake, as you can see, we've recently upgraded the cabin's overhead compartments. Let me show you where you'll be seated today." Mr. Drake. The name soared through Serena's mind. Nathan Drake, the quiet man she had belittled only days earlier. He hadn't been a lowly janitor. He must have been incognito, perhaps checking out how staff treated someone they perceived as menial. Her stomach twisted in knots, remembering how she had criticized his outfit and implied he was unworthy of traveling in such a manner. A wave of dread washed over her. This man was now her ultimate boss. He owned the airline. Their eyes met. Nathan paused, recognition lighting his expression. For a split second, neither spoke. Finally, he nodded politely, as if greeting a stranger he'd met once at a forgettable gathering. He made no direct mention of their prior encounter, offering only a courteous good afternoon. She responded with a stiff, breathless, "Welcome aboard, Mr. Drake." Her heart hammered so loudly she wondered if he could hear it. He moved on to first class, accompanied by Mr. Donovan and a small entourage of corporate staff. They seemed intent on touring the plane before departure. Serena stood frozen in the aisle, mortification burning her cheeks. Adam, noticing her pallor, whispered, "Serena, everything all right?" She gave a jerky nod, not trusting herself to speak. The humiliating irony was too much to bear. She had denigrated a man she believed to be a janitor, only to find he was the new owner of the entire airline. If that wasn't immediate karma, she didn't know what was. The rest of the boarding process passed in a haze for Serena, her mind looping over her interactions with him. She recalled each condescending remark, each pointed barb. She dreaded that he would file an official complaint, or worse, have her fired on the spot. The cabin door closed, the safety demonstration commenced, and still no direct confrontation came. Yet the tension in Serena's chest refused to ease. As the plane reached cruising altitude, the seatbelt sign clicked off. Serena mustered the courage to approach Nathan Drake, who was seated in the front row of first class. He was engaged in a low conversation with Mr. Donovan about cost-saving measures for in-flight catering. Summoning every last ounce of professionalism, Serena cleared her throat softly. "Pardon me, Mr. Drake," she said, voice shaking slightly. "May I offer you something to drink?" He looked up, eyes calm. "Water would be nice, thank you," he replied. "And please, call me Nathan." There was no malice in his tone, but Serena couldn't read him. Did he remember her well enough to hold a grudge? Or was he planning to address it later? "Certainly, Mr. Nathan," she said, fumbling with his name. She poured a chilled bottle of premium water into a glass, placing it gently on his tray table. He thanked her, then resumed his conversation as though she were invisible. The slight sting of dismissal made her stomach churn. An hour later, with the in-flight service underway, Serena worked quietly, ensuring first-class meals were served without a hitch. She peeked over at Nathan. He was sampling the salmon entree, nodding occasionally at Donovan's remarks. Every so often, she caught him glancing at her out of the corner of his eye. Their gazes would lock, and she'd sense that he remembered every detail of their prior flight. The rest of the corporate team also seemed oblivious to the tension, praising the new investor's leadership and asking about his plans for the airline. At one point, Lucy scurried to Serena in the galley. "I just heard from one of the corporate guys. Nathan Drake is the majority investor who saved Skyguard from bankruptcy. He's an entrepreneur with a hand in multiple ventures, real estate, technology. He's rumored to test companies incognito to see how employees behave." Lucy's eyes shone with excitement. "Can you imagine that? Meeting him in disguise?" Serena forced a brittle smile. "Yes," she whispered. "I can imagine." She wanted to bury her face in her hands. The knowledge that he might intentionally observe employees was like a sword over her neck. It meant that her humiliating behavior was precisely what he had been checking for. He'd seen her at her worst. A wave of anxiety crashed over her. What if he used her as an example of what not to do? The flight wore on, overshadowed by her dread. Each time she passed Nathan, her cheeks flared. She contemplated apologizing, but she kept losing nerve. The immediate presence of his corporate entourage made it impossible to speak privately. Finally, near the end of the flight, an opportunity arose when Mr. Donovan left to speak with the captain about the landing schedule. Nathan remained in his seat, scanning some documents on a tablet. Heart hammering, Serena approached. "Nathan," she began, voice low so as not to attract attention from the rest of first class. "May I have a word?" He looked up, eyebrows raised. His expression was neutral, but not unfriendly. "Of course," he said. She swallowed. "I just wanted to, address our last meeting. On that flight from Atlanta, I realize now you were traveling incognito, and, well," her voice trailed off. She felt her lips go dry. "I owe you an apology. I treated you disrespectfully, and that's not the standard we aim for at Skyguard. I was having a rough day, though that's no excuse, and I regret how I spoke to you." Nathan closed the tablet, a thoughtful look on his face. He paused long enough that Serena's heartbeat thundered in her ears. Finally, he spoke quietly. "I won't lie, it stung to be looked down on because of my uniform. People judge by appearances, but I had hoped the staff here might prove me wrong. Unfortunately, you were a bit harsh that day." His tone was neither angry nor vindictive, merely honest. Serena's eyes burned with shame. "I understand. I truly regret it. I'm prepared to accept whatever disciplinary action you feel is necessary." She expected him to call for her firing on the spot, or at least to vow to pass on scathing feedback to upper management. But Nathan's expression softened. "Serena," he said, using her name for the first time, "everyone has off days. I could see you were stressed, maybe overworked. The truth is, the airline's been dealing with staff shortages, cost-cutting, and that trickles down to employees. My goal in buying Skyguard is to fix those issues to create an environment where staff and passengers are treated well. For me, that starts with giving second chances." Her eyes welled with unexpected tears. She blinked rapidly, unwilling to cry in front of the man whose courtesy made her shame feel even heavier. I don't know what to say," she stammered. He offered a small, genuine smile. "You've apologized, and I appreciate it. Just remember, whether someone's a janitor or a CEO, kindness is the baseline standard we should maintain. I'd like to see you continue at Skyguard, hopefully in a better environment, one where you're not so rushed and frustrated that you forget the humanity in your passengers. Sound fair?" Serena's relief was so profound she nearly sagged against the seat. "That's more than fair. Thank you." Nathan nodded, then politely signaled that he needed to return to his documents. She excused herself, heart lighter than it had been for days. The tension that had coiled inside her chest was finally easing, replaced by a renewed sense of humility and gratitude. Shortly afterward, the captain announced the plane's descent into Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Passengers fastened seatbelts, and the flight attendants completed final cabin checks. Nathan Drake and his entourage put away their papers, and the cabin lights adjusted for landing. As the Boeing 737 touched down smoothly, Serena felt a swirl of emotions: relief, apprehension for the future, and a curious sense of hope that maybe the new ownership would improve the airline's morale and culture. When they reached the gate and the seatbelt sign switched off, passengers stood to collect carry-ons. Serena positioned herself by the forward door as usual. Nathan approached with Mr. Donovan, pausing briefly. "Thank you for a pleasant flight," he said, tone even but cordial. "I trust we'll meet again." She nodded, flashing a more sincere smile than she'd shown in a long time. "I look forward to it," she managed. He gave her a final polite nod, then deplaned. In the following weeks, the entire airline underwent transformation. Nathan Drake made sweeping changes, injecting capital into new training programs, better staff schedules, and improved passenger experiences. Training sessions emphasized compassion and empathy, reminding attendants that each traveler, no matter their background or attire, deserves respect. Serena attended these sessions with a renewed heart, determined to redeem herself. At first, she feared that news of her initial misstep would overshadow her career. But rather than punishing her, Nathan discreetly placed her on a small committee devoted to exploring ways to reduce staff stress. She realized he truly wanted her perspective, even if it had been shaped by frustration. Over time, she contributed helpful ideas about passenger flow, overhead bin policies, and seat assignment procedures. The intangible wall between her and her superiors seemed to crumble. After several months, the results began to show. Passenger satisfaction scores climbed, complaints dropped, employees felt more supported, and turnover rates decreased. Nathan Drake frequently toured various Skyguard flights, often dressed in casual, unremarkable outfits, chatting with crew members and travelers. He never again donned a janitor's uniform he didn't need to. The message had been received: we never truly know who we're serving, so treat everyone as you would a valued guest. One day, Serena received an email from corporate inviting her to a recognition ceremony. Skyguard was honoring select flight attendants for outstanding contributions during the airline's transition period. Shocked but proud, she attended the ceremony at a sleek hotel conference room near the Atlanta airport. Under glowing chandeliers, the airline's new leadership team presented awards. Serena heard her name called and glided onto the stage, heart pounding. Nathan Drake stood at the podium. Throughout our restructuring, many employees stepped forward with solutions, big and small, to help Skyguard evolve. Today, we recognize Serena Barnes for her active role in developing new passenger service protocols and for demonstrating a willingness to grow. Their eyes met. He smiled, offering her a handshake. She accepted with gratitude blooming in her chest. The same hand that had once offered to help her when she'd been knocked off balance by a suitcase was now presenting her with a plaque. In that moment, she reflected on how swiftly fortunes could shift. A chance encounter with a man in work coveralls had led her to re-examine her own biases and to find redemption in a new corporate culture. No longer was she the flight attendant who sneered at a passenger's uniform. Instead, she saw each traveler as a potential ally, each situation as an opportunity for empathy. When the ceremony ended, she lingered by the refreshment table. Nathan approached, sipping sparkling water. "Congratulations," he said warmly. "You've come a long way since that flight." She laughed softly. "So have you, from coveralls to a suit, though I suspect you've always preferred being understated." He shrugged. "It's how I see the real picture. I can't manage effectively if all I ever hear is yes men. Sometimes seeing raw honesty, even if it's unpleasant, provides insight into how things truly work. And it helped me see how certain policies and staffing pressures led to frustration." Serena nodded, acknowledging the complexity. She extended her hand. "Thank you for giving me a second chance. I won't forget it." He clasped her hand briefly. "Just pay it forward. Treat others with the respect they deserve, no matter who they appear to be." As they parted ways, Serena felt a sense of closure and a new beginning. The flight attendant who once mocked a janitor had learned the ultimate lesson in humility and empathy. In a world where appearances deceive and positions can shift overnight, kindness remains the universal language. The day she bumped shoulders with a stranger in a custodian's uniform was also the day. She began a journey of personal growth, one that led to personal redemption, career prosperity, and a reaffirmation of the values that make the skies friendlier for everyone. Thank you for joining us on this transformative journey of bias, regret, and the power of unexpected second chances. If this story moved you or gave you pause, please click the like button and share it with others who might need a reminder that we're all worthy of dignity, regardless of our outward status. By subscribing to this channel, you'll catch future stories that reveal the hidden lessons in everyday encounters, each packed with suspense, drama, and a final spark of hope. We appreciate your support and can't wait to share more thought-provoking narratives. Remember, in the sky or on the ground, respect and kindness never go out of style. Safe travels,